So welcome to another Wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant. Roll a bunch of ones, Kleinens.
And today we're taking a look at Nemesis, Burma 1944. This is from Legion Wargames. Came out in 2018. Designed by the illustrious Kim Kanger, who's done a bunch of games for them.
We still need to play Yen Ben Phu.
I know.
I want to play that one bad.
And some other French name titles that I'm not going to butcher the names of. But, he's done a bunch of games, and he does his own map artwork as well. And this is one that, if you look at the unboxing video, the map has a very striking quality to it. Yeah, some war game maps are muted, or it's like very functional. This one, I don't know. I don't know what it is about it. It has a distinctive look about it.
Yeah.
Now, Burma is a kind of a theatre of operations, a country we've not done a lot of games.
The CBI, right?
I think the most Burma gaming we've done is the 2 hexes in Empire of the Sun.
That's a good, that's probably a good frame of reference.
And those are pretty important hexes.
They are. You got to build that.
It's probably more than 2. It's probably 4.
Yeah, well, you got to build that railroad.
You do.
You got to protect the Crab Rangoon. You got
to build the Burma Road as well,
and protect Crab Rangoon.
Yeah. So it's
sorry, that's a bad comment.
Basically, this is late war 1944. Obviously,
yep.
This is British Commonwealth forces, American, Chinese forces, basically just trying to clear the Japanese out of Burma.
Yep. The Japanese are actually already left. They just don't know it.
Yeah.
I mean, really, right?
So you have it's a game where, just from the map point, you have the Japanese are kind of set up very centrally on the actual game map, and you have kind of Chinese forces over in the east. Never eat shredded wheat. Yep, that's right.
Yep.
Over in the east, you have British Commonwealth forces on the west,
yep.
And in the north you have
American.
What's his name?
Stillwell.
Stillwell, that's right.
But I think it's Merrill's Marauders, if I'm not mistaken. But
the Marauders were the commandos pottering around doing stuff.
Maybe
during the mid-war.
Yeah, but that was like in 43.
But this is Stillwell, who's gone up, kind of rallying Chinese forces.
Yeah, Vinegar Joe.
Yeah, getting them to actually come down and because Chiang Kai-shek and his Chinese, it's the Yunnan force, or I think
Yunnan.
Just
reinforcements.
They don't. For the first half of the game, they just sit there and don't do anything because Chiang Kai-shek wouldn't commit for political reasons. So there's this really somewhat intimidating line of blue Chinese troops in the mountains, and they don't do anything. You're desperately trying to roll a die, trying to get them to do something.
They don't do anything until you have the resources and his counter moves up. Not the resources, but until his.
It's the Chang
loses face counter.
And it's basically, if the war is going really well for Churchill, Chiang Kai-shek looks like more and more of an idiot for not joining the war. So he's losing his battle. So eventually he'll be pressured to join the war.
To get in the fight.
That, or if the Japanese do advance even further into China, or or the opposite, if they vacate their units, the Chinese don't see them as a threat, so they're like, we'll come in now and just mop up.
Yep.
So that's an interesting dynamic there, where this huge stack of units, it's totally variable if and when they come onto the board. Yeah. Because to affect that track, to get a better roll, very difficult to do.
Yeah.
And that's one of the really neat parts of this game.
Well, and I think what I wanted, before we moved on, there's a lot of really cool elements that represent that political struggle. You know, the British, hey, are we doing well? Are we getting destroyed? So Churchill gets upset and you go out of favor. And kind of the same for the Japanese. Is the war going well? That's how you win the game, in essence. And it's just very interesting how all of that is represented.
Yes.
With the lament, which is, I'm losing a lot of troops and had a lot of reductions.
Well, my towns got taken by the Japanese.
When the Japanese take certain towns, they get more satisfaction. It's a very interesting pendulum that swings back and forth that mimics the politics or the political side of this struggle.
Yes.
Very interesting.
It's and I'll show you that here in a bit. It's a very cool. It's not just, oh, how many victory points do I have?
Yeah.
It's you're kind of gaining a lot of points from doing good battles, having good dice rolls.
Yep.
Your general counter goes up, and if he goes up 10 points, then your main superior, which is Emperor Hirohito or
Churchill.
Winston Churchill, they go up one space for every 10 kind of tactical points you get, so to speak.
And that's called satisfaction.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right.
Can't get no satisfaction.
And the game is won or lost after 10 rounds based
Yep.
on who has their kind of superiors higher.
Yeah.
Is Churchill more satisfied or is Hirohito more satisfied?
Mm-hmm.
If there's a big enough disparity, the game ends automatically and
Yeah.
whoever's lost. But the things that factor into all of those, and those tracks can go down by those lamentations. You have a lamentation marker.
Yep.
From losses, attrition, things like that. The way those interact is fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and then there's even at the end of the rounds,
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact, we did it
You
a couple of times, several
however
times.
far up your general is on the track,
You have to
a
roll
die.
under that number.
Yeah. So if you do well, but not kind of well enough,
Right.
you get a die roll, and it's like, okay, you did enough.
Yeah.
And he basically gets you that superior movement point.
Right.
So Churchill goes up one space because you rolled decently and you
Yeah.
made a good.
So it was kind of a random,
yeah.
but it rewards you having done
Having at
some
least
good
made some
battles.
progress, yeah.
Well, and it was interesting. The one that was really bad, you were at a 2.
I was at a
Your
2.
general was only at a 2.
So I had to roll a 2 or less.
2 or less on a 6, and you rolled it.
Yeah.
And I had to roll a 9 or less on a 6-sider. So obviously that's
Yeah,
never
there
going
comes
to
a
happen.
point where you'll always get that.
Yeah, so just very interesting. I don't know that I've seen a lot of hex encounter war games use that many. I don't even know what I'm trying to. Those vehicles to move the game forward.
Yeah.
Just those interesting elements. I thought that was very, very cool.
It's unique for sure. Never
Yeah.
seen that before, and it was cool to consider because you'd have to for the Japanese. You're like, well, do I do a Banzai charge? Because if you do the Banzai charge, you get a positive dice roll modifier.
Right, which can make a huge difference.
But if you lose guys, because you'll take permanent losses from Banzai charges,
Yeah.
unsurprisingly.
Yeah, you can never get those guys back.
But you incur more heavy lamentations for
Yep.
that.
Or dissatisfaction, basically.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
those tracks affect how much do I do that?
Yep.
Because I might kill you might kill the British units, but your dissatisfaction is going to be greater as well.
And the reason behind that is a bonsai charge, or the other one is a massive attack. Isn't that what they call that?
I think it's what it's called.
I swear it's called a
the
massive.
name of like an English electro band.
Massive combat. So it's like both sides have that ability to really influence those losses or that die roll.
Yeah.
But it comes at a price.
Yes.
And the price is more casualties, more wounds, and therefore
Greater lamentations.
lack of public opinion or public support of the war. So it's a very good balance. I would love to play this one again and really think about my decisions.
Yeah.
Because I was pretty impetuous. I was like, I'm going to banzai you every time. And
That's why I like it when you play the Japanese.
well, yeah, I'm always
Throw it to the wind.
taking out the katana and running over the top. But
Yeah, this one makes you think about doing that.
Yeah,
a
I
lot
think
of games, it's not, I want to say frivolous, but
Yeah.
you're like, Banzai every time.
Yep. Well, the punishment is that dissatisfaction, and it's a neat element. It's a neat pendulum that I think makes this a very unique war game.
Yes.
Makes it more than just a hex and counter war game, which it is at its heart. I like that. It also is really an exercise in planning and supply routes.
Yes, like many hex and counter war games, move and attack, do your combats, and all that kind of stuff.
That's pretty standard for everything.
And the supply is actually quite typical.
Yeah.
But it is also crucial.
Well,
And
I don't know that I agree that it's typical, only because it uses some different methods. Typical supply is just tracing back to a spot, and it really doesn't have a lot of the limitations. This game had limitations based
Right.
on terrain. If you're going across mountains, you have to use the movement points to trace your supply across that mountain. So
what I meant is the idea of the supply, right? Here's your supply points. You have to trace back to those.
So that's very typical.
If you're on a main road, you just go down the main road, right?
And there's no enemy units in the middle of that, then you just go down that road.
The difficulty in this is when it's so easy to get into precarious supply situations. Because if you can't just go on like a normal main road or a track, if you start getting off kind of what's called paths, like basically like a donkey trail.
Yep. Deer path.
Quite literally, yeah.
Yep.
Or you get into the jungle or up into the mountains, you then have to use, like you said, your movement factor to trace supply. And it's brutal. Like a mountain hex is 3? Is it 3?
Moving on a path in a mountain, not in monsoon weather, is 2 movement points.
Yeah.
Most of your supply, your headquarters, and your mule counters give 4. So 2 of those points for 1 hex, that means you can get 2 hexes.
Yeah.
So you've got to have
at best.
Yeah, you've got to have a couple mules in between.
Which is insanely hard to do.
It's very hard, because you don't have many mules. And it's not like you can birth mules or get more mules or find mules. I can't even capture your mules.
No.
Right? If they're in a hex, they just
move to the next hex and run away.
You can't attack them. So that was the critical difference, and I apologize for stepping over you. Just say what you mean next time. Come on. I mean, but I think that was it was an interesting exercise trying to understand. You had airdrop. I didn't have airdrop.
Yes.
So you kept your Chindit units in supply in the middle, kind of harassing me.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I could have gotten those out of there, because you had 4 resupplies every turn, right? 4 airdrops every turn?
Yes, but those 4 resupplies came at the cost of using
the counter, which you can do 4 times. So eventually it does become...
Like, I do have to go and relieve those guys eventually. And I'm trying to use Stillwell's force to
you were getting there
and do that. But yeah, we play a lot of games, and supplies usually is quite important, right?
But it's typically easy. Oh, I'm in supply.
Yeah.
This one you really had to think about.
Or if you're not in supply, it's like, I can't attack. Here you've got a couple of states of supply, so it's limited supply, out of supply.
Yeah. Which makes it harder for the Japanese, because I had you in limited supply, but it would have taken several more rounds for you to start taking
then I get reductions. Out of supply, then I start to take
attrition.
And when you take attrition, it's also fascinating.
It's at the end of the round.
Not necessarily.
Well, when you draw your supply chit.
Also not necessarily.
Okay.
It never happened because I was the only one that had that. So
you're right.
Supply and attrition is based on your unit quality. So the unit quality is used for so many things in this game.
Yeah.
All of your units are rated 1 through 3. 3 being good, 1 being terrible. That affects combat odds.
Yep.
You get a column shift for having better quality units.
Yep.
It affects kind of supply. It affects zones of control.
Yep. Zones of control was a big one.
3. If you have a 3 strength unit, they just emit a zone of control.
Yep.
If you have a 2 quality unit, it only puts out a zone of control on tracks and roads. If you have a 1 strength unit, it doesn't have a zone of control. Just pathetic. But
so that was also a very unique element in this, that unit quality.
But with supply, if you have a 1 quality unit that's terrible and it's out of supply, it immediately takes attrition as soon as you make it out of supply.
Right.
A 2 strength unit does it at the end of the turn.
And I was just not able to get...
And the 3 quality unit does it the next time you draw your supply chit.
Right.
So you can... And this is a chit draw game. But that's also different. And you can at least manipulate a little bit how your chits come out.
Yeah.
And I'll show you a little bit about that.
That was an interesting... The phase order of when you pulled those, basically was very interesting.
Each player has 4 chits. They're identical. And...
Attack, assault... Reinforcement and supply.
Check. And you basically, you draw them, but you...
Out of your cup.
The order that you draw them is very important. There's a little track. So 1, 2, 3, 4. At the beginning of next turn, you pick one of the first 3 to be your first chit next time. You keep it secret.
Yeah.
So that's, this is my first one. But that fourth one that you just did, that cannot be the one that you choose.
Yeah.
So if you just had a supply check as the last thing last turn, and you've got some out of supply units, you can guarantee that you are able to move some units
and
for
hopefully
next turn, because you
get them rescued.
You can't choose the supply check immediately.
No. So it's at least going to be
So
two
like,
chits.
I'm going to choose my assault because that gives me lots of movement options. I'm going to choose that for my first or next round before I end up getting another supply check and have to take some attrition to my good units. So there's a lot of different details in this game that.
I think actually a lot of this game, there are a lot of unique elements that are included.
Yes.
That token or that chit phase element, the unit qualities, the supply system, lots of very interesting elements.
There is
the satisfaction.
It makes them. There's a lot of things to kind of remember.
Yeah,
and it's easy, especially learning the game, to kind of forget. Oh, oops.
Yep.
So it was like, oh, I got to go back and make that.
Well, and we did that a couple of times, like the different column shifts, even. Oh, I had higher unit quality than you. We should have been.
Yeah.
And a couple times we either went back and changed it. A couple times we just said, wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah. But, I had 2 motorized units stacked together, and I shouldn't have done
isn't
that.
able. Yep.
It's hard to keep track of some of the bits and pieces.
Yeah.
But all in all, the movement and combat I felt was at least fairly familiar.
Yep.
It's combat odds on a table, roll a die.
Yeah.
But the die roll, even the die roll, affects that kind of satisfaction.
Yeah. You roll a 1 or a 2.
The enemy gets satisfaction. Because you rolled terribly.
Yeah, the battle didn't go your way.
Yeah.
If you roll a 5 or a 6, you get satisfaction. So
anything in the middle, nothing.
So we were joking. I rolled, I think, 4 or 5 ones, and you rolled a couple.
Yeah, I rolled some bad
as
rolls.
well. But that was interesting, that satisfaction element from those rolls. But this was a brutal CRT.
Yeah, it's not.
I'm not sure. I think the highest odds we saw was 7-1.
I think we saw 7-1, yeah.
Once. Everything else was generally 3-1 or lower. Generally. There was a 5-1 in there.
Mostly it was 2-1 and 3-1.
And there were a lot of 1-1s too.
We did a couple of those.
I felt like we had a lot.
I felt like we were all on 2-1 all the time.
Yeah, we were.
But there's a lot in this game. The CRT is an interesting one because it's just...
Yeah.
It was jungle warfare.
It's very... I think it's very attritional. You're not going to see more than a couple of losses. Even if you roll a 6 and you're 7-1, you're only going to see the enemy taking 2... Unless you did a massive combat... And they might have done a bonsai charge.
Right. And so there comes a point where you're like, I need to make progress. You're like, I got to do it.
I got to do it.
I got to suck up the losses myself to inflict losses on you.
Yep.
I have to do it.
Yep.
But there's a lot of neat little elements, details in this that once you kind of get them down pat, you get some pretty interesting choices and decisions.
Yeah.
It isn't just, do I attack? It's, well, how do I attack? And if I attack now, there's just some choices to be made, and there's a lot of rules about moving after attacking and retreats and things like that.
Yep.
You can't just voluntarily retreat.
Yeah.
A retreat has to be
I can decide as the
upon
attacker, you're not retreating.
Yeah. And it's,
which is that's a condition of the terrain, and I think the conditions
and the fact that the Japanese weren't going to back down.
No.
And
they weren't known for backing down.
And neither were the British. They were like, we got to take this and get this over with.
We got to get this cleaned up.
So there's a lot of, on the surface, because the rulebook, be honest,
10 pages.
16 pages
16
at most.
pages.
And I was like, oh, this will be an easy one to learn. But there's actually a lot of little bits in this.
Yep.
A lot of chrome.
Yeah, agreed.
It all works. And the sides are asymmetrical. Like if you played the British now, you kind of have to learn a lot of the rules.
Yeah, you'd have to.
There's some working.
Well,
rules
with reinforcements, how it works with resources, and so and I know we played a couple of weeks ago Gallipoli,
yes,
which was a very complex, very deep, very detailed game. This is nowhere near that complex, but it still has some of that complexity. I feel like the complexity here is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it creates that struggle and feeling and thematic element and makes the game different. It makes it unique.
I didn't even think it was super... complex.
There was just
I
a
think
lot
it's
to remember.
detailed.
Just a lot to
Yeah.
remember.
But it's the difference between detail and complexity is an important distinction there.
Right.
I think it does have lots of bits and pieces to remember, but nothing where it's overwhelming. If you forget it, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
You don't just break the game, for example.
No.
And all of it serves a purpose.
Yep.
Just generally, at least. So it was fun. What I'll do is I'll show you the board, and kind of what it all looks like, and I'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So here's a look at the map, and this is what I was talking about with it being quite a striking map. I don't know. I just felt like it was quite bold, and big hexes, big pieces. I just thought it was a cool looking map. The text is very clear. No mistake in what's what in this one. And I don't know. I like a game that's maybe looks a little bit different than your average war game, with kind of your toned down grays and greens and browns. I felt like this one had some just, I don't know, nice looking game at least. There is quite a lot on the map. Let's see if I got some stuff cut off here at the top. Here. There's a lot of different tracks on both sides of the map. Japanese stuff's down the bottom. British stuff's up here, so you're going to sit on either side of it, basically. There's a lot of stuff here. So this is what we've been talking about here. This is the Japanese Satisfaction and Lament track down here. And this is really, really important because you have your general, he's kind of your field general, and then you have Hirohito, and you have your lament marker. Basically, your general, he's going to go up this track every time you roll decently on this, every time you take an objective. So this objective's worth 4 satisfaction, and this, you can see there's kind of a whole bunch of stuff on here that you're going to get satisfaction for. But basically doing well in battles, doing well tactically, things like that, you'll go up on the satisfaction track. Once this satisfaction gets to 9 and you get one more, you've basically done so well, Hirohito's impressed. He goes up 1. If you ever get this to 9, and if your enemy is ever at 0, which may well happen, if you're getting up to 9, you're doing really well, probably the enemy is doing very poorly, then you have like an auto victory. But basically victory is, at the end of 10 turns, who's got the most of their superior is what it's called. Hirohito versus Winston Churchill. Whoever's got the most wins the game. It's as simple as that. It's the satisfaction that's the really important part. And that's important because, you had your little general going up, that's great. But your lament, this is an 8 right now, that's very bad. If your lament goes up to 9 and goes up to 10, this goes down as public opinion gets very poor because you've lost a lot of guys. Every time you lose guys, that lament's going up. If you do banzai charges and you lose guys, that goes up even more. When the enemy takes your victory hexes, where you've got these little numbers and little stars, your laments go up. Very, very bad to kind of give ground. Losing a lot of dudes, the attrition, all affects these laments. So you have your how well I'm doing versus how many guys am I losing, basically, is going to affect how this guy goes up and down. And it's this amazing little kind of interaction that you're trying to manipulate. And there are times where you kind of hold off doing something because it might give you too much lamentation. Or, you're like, oh, I just want to get 1 or 2 more, because if you don't make this at the end of a round, this resets to 0. But before you do that, you get a die roll on a d6. If you roll equal to or less than this gets to go up anyway. So I roll a die. I roll a 2. 2 is less than 8. We're good. So I'm going to get this anyway before it resets. What's precarious is when you start getting... If you're at 3 by the end of the turn because you had a really bad turn, it's a 50-50 to whether you get anything out of this. If you get it 2... nothing happens. You don't get this extra bonus. This just goes back to 0. You had a terrible turn. But if you roll your 3 or a 5, you roll a 5, yay! Oh no, you roll under. 2 is a good thing. Oh yeah. 2 was under, equal to or less than. Yay, we go up. If you roll a 5, or a 6, that's bad. You don't get to go up. This goes back to 0 anyway. That's how it is. So even if you do terribly, there's still a chance that you might be able to pull it out, and kind of you're almost like hamming up to your superiors what you did, and maybe lying about the progress you did make, but they buy into it. Kind of how I see that going. On top of that, you have all these Chinese forces in the Yunnan force, basically. This is what I was talking about. These guys, scary as all get out. Big line of blue troops. And they could just slam in here and kind of take out the East Front, so to speak. But they don't start active. And they basically won't do anything until they're openly attacked by the Japanese, or Chiang Kai-shek loses face. The more Churchill goes up on this track, the more this token goes up on this track. And it's basically, we're doing so well as the British and Commonwealth that the Chinese look very weak in not contributing, not doing anything, helping the war. So again, basically at the beginning of every turn, you roll a dice equal to or less than Chiang's basically losing face counter. Roll a 1, it's less than this, they activate. Great, we can come out and we can do all big attacks and move with these guys as well. And doing that, I mean, it puts a lot of pressure on the Japanese. So this is another independent little mini game. The Allied reinforcements, they have a ton of them, but they come onto the map in this Allied off-map box. And then you have to spend these resources to bring them onto the board in the reinforcement hexes and move them on. There's this whole little economy of doing that. You gain resources by losing guys, and by these enemy flags on the board where they've taken objectives. And it's weird that you would get resources for that, but the resources are, things are going very badly, we need to pump more in. That's basically what that means. So this is a very interesting economy for doing that, but again, it's asymmetric. The Japanese player doesn't have that. The Japanese player has this whole little system about how they take losses. Are they permanent losses? Are they normal losses? They can bring back a bunch of these guys during their reinforcement phases, but they're not as strong overall as these Commonwealth forces coming in. So there's just a lot of fascinating bits and pieces to this one. As far as combat goes, combat is as simple as these two factors are 4 movement, 4 attack, 4 movement. So this is a 12 stack, and we'll stick them here in the jungle, and they're going to go up against, this is an 8 and a 4. This red unit, oh, they can't go there. Red means they're motorized, so this is kind of mech artillery, and they can't leave roads or tracks. So they're going to sit here, 8 and 4 is 12, 12 on 12, you roll on the 1-to-1 table. And there's a couple of different column shifts here. One is based on troop quality. These guys have a 3 troop quality, and these guys have a 1. And I believe that gives it the difference between the quality and the troops. That's your column shifts. So shift the number of columns equal to the difference between quality of this. You choose lead attack and lead defend. You have to have those. Kind of in some games you see that. You can't have artillery as a lead attack. So this guy's a 3, this guy's a 1. The difference is 2. So I'm going to get 2 column shifts in my favor. This is a yellow unit. This little background NATO symbol is yellow. These are all white. Yellow is a support unit. If you have more than 3 support points than the enemy, you get a support column shift. Basically, you've got the heavy weapons, or the air support, that kind of thing. And there's some little air support markers you can throw in as well. So that's another column shift. So we're at 1-to-1. You get 2 for quality, 1 for this. You might have a shift for terrain. If they're in the mountains, we get a shift back to 3-to-1, for example. And then it's simply roll a dice. Roll a die. I'll roll a 3. And a 3 means the attacker takes no losses and the defender may be forced to retreat. And retreats are interesting because as the attacker I can say, nope, I'm not going to enforce the retreat, which means they have to sit there. They can't optionally retreat. I can say, yep, I'm going to force you to retreat. Well, I've got a better quality than you, so I force them to retreat. They can retreat as normal if they wish. If they want to say, nah, we're not going to retreat, they're going to take losses equal to that difference there, and then they're going to basically sit there. So you can absorb more losses to keep your ground if you wish. That is something that you can do, although it's a little bit challenging. Now what you may have noticed here on this table is this little red box and this little green box. If you roll poorly, the enemy gets one of those satisfaction points. If you roll well, you get one of those satisfaction points. So anytime you do dice rolling, outcome of combat, little things like that will affect the overall kind of grand strategic picture of the whole theatre, which, again, very, very interesting to play around with, that a simple die roll and this little combat can affect this huge political outcome, even in a small way. Really, really, really like that. Combat-wise, this is kind of a pretty bog-standard type of combat. There's things like bunkers, which add a troop quality, so this guy's normally a 1. If he's sat in a bunker, he's a 2. If you're attacking across these major rivers, it gives the defender, or I think the attacker, is -1 to their troop quality. That troop quality number is really, really important. If you find if you're attacking with a 2 on a 3, you're at a disadvantage. Those column shifts are a big deal. Supply, very important in this one. You want to keep to these main roads. That's the easiest method of supply. If not, you've got these kind of moving, roving HQ units, which you got to take with you, or even the mules. Take those with you to help extend your supply lines. The British have these airdrops that they can supply. That's how they supply these Chindit units in the middle here. But doing that costs you these kind of special supply points in the Imphal airport here. If you drop all of your supply points, it costs you one of your air units, and it costs you one of these supplies, and it's basically a 5 or a 6 on the D6 to get one of these back. So it kind of a crapshoot at times. But so there's a lot of little moving parts for each side, but nothing overwhelming or anything like that. And it's just a neat game. The turns go by pretty quickly because you have just 4 of these little chits. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's a little chip pull. They're identical on each side, but the order in which you do means no turn's going to be the same typically. And then at the beginning of next turn, so let's say we have this here. This is how my turn played out. I did reinforcements, attack, assault, and supply check. But what I do for next turn is one of these first 3, you can see there's a little divide here. One of these first 3, I'm choosing one of these to be what I'm going to do. So I'm going to secretly choose assault. That's going to be my first turn next turn, and these 3 go back in the cup. These are going to be random of how they turn. And the Japanese players are going to do the same thing secretly. So you get a little bit of choice, but not all the choice in the world that you may have liked. But that's kind of the gist of this game. It's pretty slow going once you get out of the mountains, or if you can swing by on the roads. You're trying to push down here with Stilwell's force, and then trying to get Chiang Kai-shek to make this push. Because if you can get this going as well as these 2, you got a 3-pronged attack. Probably going to go pretty decently if you can make everything work together. But having that kind of symphony of different fronts come together can be quite the challenge with supply and with the way that your turns activate and combat results on top of all that. So what we'll do is we'll kind of wrap up with a few final thoughts here and get you on your way. So that was a look at the map. Burma 1944.
Beautiful map.
Yeah, it's
really
just,
beautiful
it's a cool
map.
looking map.
Good production in this game.
Some of the boxes and tracks were a little bit crushed up at times.
Yeah. But well, because you have so many more boxes. You have this off map box. I have the losses box, but other than that, I don't have a lot of these.
I just remember opening it and having all the numbers.
It is a little odd,
but it's also a function of
the topography and the terrain. Yeah,
they crushed a lot onto the map.
Yeah,
so that you don't have a ton of play aid cards and things like that, which is fine.
I think I would have preferred to see this map just a little bigger, because then it could have been like this would have been straight and you could have seen it more easily.
But when we were setting it up, I know you were like, these counters are huge.
Yeah, they felt huge.
I appreciate big hexes and big counters.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got some pretty sizable stacks in this one at times.
Right.
But having it all manageable, there's space on the board, I didn't feel like we were cluttered, which is always a big bonus.
Yeah.
That I'm not ham-fisted smashing it
right.
around. But yeah, it's got some detail-oriented game, but it gives what seems to be a pretty robust depiction of what Burma was like in a war game, at least in 1944.
So that's my warning for this game. My warning for this game is understand it is Burma 1944, right? The Japanese have been fighting now for 3 years, and it's nearing the end. So they're not as powerful as they. If this was Burma 1941,
that'll be the opposite.
Or 42, it would have been much different. Their air power's reduced. Their units aren't as big. Their unit quality is good.
Yes,
they have some veteran units. But this game is I believe in order for the Japanese to win, and this is after just a single play, the Japanese I think are going to have to get fairly lucky in some of their rolls with their satisfaction. I think they're going to have to take, just like I did, those 3 or 4 cities and really focus on swinging around from the south.
Yeah.
Because I really think that's your only realistic way of putting enough pressure on the British to win this game.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, right? We probably disagree on that.
No, yeah, I think you're right. You've got to make some very strong moves early, and then probably a fighting withdrawal towards the end of the game.
Right, just to kind of hold.
Because once the weather sets in, it's just a mess for everyone.
You can't move because every movement element, which I thought was very cool.
Yeah, suddenly...
the monsoon it basically added... It almost doubled every movement type.
And the little rivers that were innocuous
would become major rivers.
And now impossible.
Yeah,
things
so
like
that's interesting. But when you play this, make sure the guy playing the Japanese is okay in kind of getting beat up a little bit.
Or play it solo. This is an excellent solo game.
Yeah, I
no
agree.
Hidden information.
Well, it's chip pulling.
Chip pull. And
the only hidden piece of information is that which of the phases but that's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, you would just make a pretty smart tactical decision for each
You would make the best decision.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is the terrain, the topography, the movement factors, and the unit, not the unit quality, but the unit power is going to make it hard for the Japanese. So I struggled with that only because I could see hope at the beginning. I think by the end of turn 2, I think I was like, oh boy, I'm in trouble. They're pushing down and it just, I don't know. That's the way I feel. So just be prepared for that. Don't think you're going to come into this game and it's going to be a fair fight, because it's not.
You got some good simulation in this one.
Yep.
It's an interesting game for sure. I've seen some new things in this war game.
Yep.
Like with those tracks. New stuff in here that I'd not seen before.
Well, and that satisfaction stuff was really, really cool.
It was really.
It was very interesting.
You do a couple battles, and all of a sudden you're like, "Ooh, yeah, I'm going up."
Yeah.
You're feeling really good, and then you move up a bit more. You got a die roll. You're going up more.
Yep.
And then you're like, "Oh no! Oh my God, it's died. I'm going back down again." That's just, I don't know. It's neat to have more than just, here's some victory points because you took this town.
Yeah. It definitely...
It's a bit more, I don't know.
Yeah, it got away from that, I held 7 objectives at 1 point apiece. That is not the way this game is. It is based on how well you fought.
Taking those objectives have different numbered values, which give you different amounts of satisfaction.
Which gives you satisfaction, yep.
It's
cool.
That aspect
is
very cool.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see that in other games.
In some other games,
I think that's a really neat system.
Yeah. Well, and I think we've said this before. I remember saying this in a video. I like designers that are going to take a little bit of a risk.
Yes.
To put some new things in there, and not just make a CRT and a great OOB based on the historical battle, create some terrain, and let you slug it out. This one really had a lot of cool elements. Lots of mini games within that bigger game.
Yes.
And I really liked this. I'd like to play the British.
Yes.
and learn that and maybe feel what it is to bring a stack of
well, yeah, and
35 down on my
you've got to
pitiful
go
stack
on the
of 8.
offensive, and it's got to be a pretty decently organized offensive to really make the headway you need to as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's Nemesis, Burma 1944 from Legion Wargames. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I've been Alexander.
And I'm Grant.